Great to see you again.
Yeah, you too, brother. How you been?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Devin Townsend, great to see Devin Townsend with your new album, a long-awaited The Moth project, your opus. I would say something you've been working on for a long time. And the album is not out yet, but it's finished for you because like it's done. So I wonder, what do you feel having recorded, having finished this kind of opus? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel relief, or maybe do you feel anxiety or depression?
Probably all of those things. um, I mean, it's like somebody described it the other day, like taking it like a shit after 10 years of not being able to shit, and that's there's certainly a part of that. Um, every record that gets finished has this weird sort of cornucopia of emotions after it's over. You know, I think it's a lot of it's just the come down, right? Because the intensity of making something like this is such that when it stops, you're just kind of like you're still on red alert, looking for problems to solve and things to sort out. And in absence of those, you just you're kind of in a weird space. You do get depressed, you do go up and down, but it's that's what happens with all the records, right? So it's not like this one is exempt from that. Is it more than others? Yeah, it's definitely more than others. But in the scheme of things, it's just a work as usual in a sense. The record's finished and you feel fucked up, and then you move on, right?
Uh, and this record, I mean, you've been working like for 10 years on this record, but I remember that actually the idea of recording something like this is much older. It came to you when you were like 10 years old.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why this project took 10 years is not because I was working on it constantly for 10 years, but there was just a lot of technical things I had to learn how to do, whether or not it was learning about orchestration or learning about how, the pipeline would look to delegate the workload. It was a lot of logistical challenges, right? Um, and when did I start thinking about this? I mean, I was talking to a friend about it the other night, how dumb I am because I just don't remember any of these things. I don't remember back when the original idea happened. I think it's always been there, and probably because of the musicals in the 70s that I was raised watching. It just seemed like maybe when I was a kid, I saw some of those things on TV or um, in the movies and thought, oh, that would be a cool avenue to take. Uh, and so I guess in a sense, yeah, it's been like a lifelong goal to try and pull something like this off, right? It just took years to be able to meet the people that would allow me to do it.
So what was bigger inspiration for you? Was it musical, as you said, or were they rock operas like Tommy or The Wall, or maybe classical operas, classical music?
Kind of all of it. I think there was a combination of the 70s musicals, the Paint Your Wagon, Jesus Christ Superstar, Phantom of the Opera and all that. But there was also um, the rock operas as well. Like you say, The Wall was like a big one for me when I was a kid. Um, and in terms of classical opera, I was never really like classically inclined, but I listened to a lot of classical music like we all did back then because it was in all the movies, right? Like every time I often tell this story, but when I first heard like a Stravinsky piece of music by Stravinsky, I remember thinking, "Oh, that's just the desert planet in Star Wars." It was
Yeah.
like it wasn't like I had um, like a sense that I was really going to participate with classical music. I just feel like it was such a part of our upbringing that I think I probably just internalized it by Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, right?
2001 Space Odyssey.
Yep, totally. Yeah, but I guess that would be more like actually traditional classical music, right?
Mhm.
For me, I love the idea of the cinematic qualities of how uh, orchestral music and otherwise could help tell a story. And I think throughout my career, I've had little things that I want to check off my list, whether or not it's doing like a rock opera or country music or ambient music or whatever. And this was just another example of something, but this is a long one. This one has been like in the queue for quite a while.
You said you had to learn how to orchestrate your music in order to record a Moth. And did you think of hiring someone? Because, like,
Oh yeah.
a lot of artists, rock artists, when they write opera or something with strings, they just hire someone to orchestrate their music. Did you ever thought about it?
Yeah, so I hired two people, Nils By Nielsen and Joseph Stevenson. Um, when I say I had to learn about orchestration, it was more about the language of it. Because how I typically would write is I would do things in MIDI or with my voice and then give it to an orchestrator, and then they would interpret that into a way that the orchestra could read and understand. And but that also yielded some really cool collaborative things between Joseph and I. But when I say that I had to learn how to orchestrate, I just had to learn like what it was. I when I first started working with orchestral sort of arrangements was back with deconstruction, and at the time I had no idea. So I'd write the parts, and then I hired an orchestrator, Florian, back then, and he would put it together. And then I remember being in Prague working with the orchestra, and there being a mistake that I heard, but I didn't have the language to explain. So I was having to pick up a guitar and try and find the right fret and like explain it to, and it's such a waste of time and money that a big part of the process for me was like, okay, so when we go into this, and you're going to have the orchestrator, you're going to have the orchestras, you're going to have the choral directors, you're going to have like the choral orchestra, all these things. You want to be able to at least communicate. And so that process was really frustrating because I had to start from zero. I went from making the type of music that I've made for all these years to sitting with a teacher and being like, Mary had a little lamb, and it's just it's very frustrating actually. But yeah, like the whole point of learning orchestration for me was just so I have like a vocabulary, so that when I am working with people, I can say no, it's actually like this, or that's cool, or maybe we can try this, or you know what I mean. So
I
that's
think
what it
it's
took.
like
It took a
uh,
lot of time.
I think it's like learning a new language, like when you
Uh
are
huh.
in your age and you communicate in one language, but then you start learning another language, you discover like I'm dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And I mean, it wasn't just the orchestration. It was like relationships changed, and as you get older, you start to recognize the ways in which your actions contribute to problems, and also just like I started learning different recording software. I started working with Logic and Reaper or Ableton as well as Pro Tools, and all the hotkeys that for your program. It's like again, it's like learning a new language, and you just feel like Captain Caveman when you're trying to get your ideas out. But after, over time, I guess I'm not as dumb as I thought because I was able to learn, but still pretty dumb for sure.
The moth, the theme of the this rock opera is, at least according to your press release, true self-acceptance. And I wonder, like most of your work is about true self-acceptance, isn't it?
Maybe ultimately, I think the frustrating part of my work for me is that I don't know what it's about until I'm done. And then I can kind of reflect on it and say, oh, I guess it's about acceptance. But it's easy to sort of retroactively uh, kind of define the work. Are they all about truth and acceptance? Maybe to some degree, but not as overtly as Moth. Moth is very literal. I think it's supposed to describe a transformation from one state of being to another, and the first state of being needed to be so over the top and obnoxious and complicated expensive and all these things, so that when the payoff at the end of the project comes around, where it's like everything is chill, it's a very stark contrast, right? Um, and so I think truth and acceptance with Moth is probably, yeah, very very overt theme. But is that what all the music is about? Uh, I don't know. Probably, but not as obviously as Moth, right?
Mm. I also liked one description you said in one interview that Moth is overwhelming narrative about meaning of life written by a bunch of people who have no fucking idea.
Totally. Totally. I mean, it's like, I think one of the most interesting parts about putting together the narrative for the Moth as well is there was like a bunch of people that contributed to this story. And some of them wanted to have a moral at the end of it. Like, and they lived happily ever after or whatever. And I argued that from the beginning. I was like, dude, none of us fucking know. None of us know. Least of all me or you, like the arrogance of trying to summarize the experience of something like we've all been through over the past 10 years at least with pandemic, or try to summarize meaning of life. God, dude, like, if you're looking for a succinct summary of the meaning of life, you're going to want to talk to somebody other than me.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when I think about it, like, what is the best description of meaning of life in the culture, like in the broad culture? And I think like the best on the spot description is Monty Python's meaning of life because it's so
Yeah,
absurd.
yeah. And the ending is great in that too. It's like, you just read some books, go on, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's as a artistic mind, I feel like I as I've gotten older, the only things that interest me to write about are things that are like of a grander scale. Like, it's the amount of work that it takes to make songs about anything. I mean, boy meets girl, or let's go to the bar and drink some beer, or whatever you're writing about. It's a lot of work to make it happening. So if I'm going to engage in a project that is clearly going to be a lot of work, it's got to be something that I think is at least interesting conceptually. And I would say that the Moth is not about the meaning of life. I would say Moth is more of my experience, uh, understanding it as poorly as I do, of what a period of real transformation looks, feels, and sounds like. And to be able to sort of um, utilize sound to say, well, this is what the experience is like for me, and I've had help with it and all this. I think that's the only sort of writing that seems like noble's the wrong word, interesting enough to do. I couldn't imagine rationalizing the amount of work that went into the Moth if it was something banal, right? So we maybe have the meaning of life on the surface, but again, it's written by a bunch of people who have no fucking idea, so that helps.
And initially you wanted to write about sex, dicks, and vaginas.
It still is. I think what ends up happening for me is I have these moments where I have an idea that just seems to be really compelling, but I don't understand it. I just have a vision in my head. And 10 years ago, I was like, oh, it's something called The Moth, and it's about transformation, but it's also got something to do with sex. So during the time where I'm formulating the idea, and I don't formulate it consciously, I just kind of do other things, and then it develops in the background. And then people are asking me about it. I'm like, it's probably about dicks. But now that it's finished, I think I realize more. It's less about. It's not supposed to be a joke. It's almost like written from the point of view of sex being trauma, and how the society is so separate from any sense of unity with nature or beauty or each other, that we conflate the idea of sex with that. And so sex becomes a metaphor and an analogy for like power, and so it has to be presented as really ugly and really destructive, just to sort of make that juxtaposition, or make that sort of, the difference between what this society views as beautiful and has perverted into something so, like abusive in a lot of ways, versus what maybe humanity is looking for in general, which is meaning of some sort, So, yeah, it's still a dick and vagina symphony. It's just I'm slowly catching up to why it is that.
So you're like rediscovering the meaning of it yourself.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that's important too as you get older, because I think, again, it's such a powerful thing, and I know for myself the ways that it shaped my formative years and my teen years and all these things. It's like I know that I conflate emotions, right? Like whether or not it's love and sex or whatever. It's like I'm not a poster child for being psychologically the most normal person you'll ever meet, right? So I think that um, what I'm figuring out about the concept at this age, after 10 years of thinking about it, is just how you have no real control over it as an artist. In a sense, your obligations to your vision are just about getting it right, regardless of, I never go into something like this going, oh, I can't wait to impose this on the audience. I can't wait to, make a 72-minute long sex symphony about meaning of life, because that's really what people want. I think it's like I go into it thinking, oh shit, I've got this idea that seems like I have to do it. And so the further I get into the idea, the more I'm like, oh shit, it has to have a big orchestra. Oh shit, it has to, you know what I mean? And then by the end of it, my whole goal with the audience is just to try and rationalize it and just be like, it's what I felt was important. And so I did it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and you did it. I mean, you presented Moth live almost exactly 1 year ago today. It was like in March 2025, and
Yeah.
I wonder how did this feedback from these two performances, how big influence had it on you and to the final Moth album?
Well, the vision is the same. So we did a remix of the live stream that will be coming out with the record, and you'll hear that the album was there even a year prior. Some of the lyrics weren't there, some of the little nuances were not ironed out yet. But the way that it influenced me, well, there's two ways, one of which was really practical. We ended up doing just an orchestra and choral version of it without any band and without any lead vocals. And that would not have occurred had we not done that performance, because there was a bunch of people in the choir who were older, like, 70 or 80 or something. And when they finally heard what we were doing with the band and explosions and screaming and double kick and all this stuff, they were like really bummed out. So I chose to ask the label and the orchestra if we could release a version of just the orchestra and choir parts. And they agreed, and it smoothed that over. They were happy, and by doing that, I heard it with different ears, and then it affected how we moved forward with the actual recording of the actual album. Just as a result of having heard the orchestra just so raw, right? But I also think that the feedback that I got from that show is also hand in hand with the chaos of trying to pull it off. Like, to present a project that is unfinished, there's no record for it, there's no precedent for it. It's incredibly complicated. How do you mix it for a live stream? Like, how do you mix it? Like, just the logistics of that are crazy. How we chose to try and deal with that problem is I had the front of house guy come to the studio here, and then we just tried to pre-mix it all so that we had like a sense of what it would do. But even that, it was just like the logistics of it were so daunting that by the time the show was over, I don't even know if I processed it yet. You know, I just went straight from that experience into the finishing of the record, into, you know, it's just, there's so many things that have happened since that um, gosh, I haven't had time to sort of sit and think about my life in a long time, and so that's another example of it. I think it affected it on the surface, but maybe not super fundamentally.
Mm. So the idea of the transformation presented in the Moth, how much of it is description of your personal transformation, and how much
All
are
of
you
it.
just an observer?
Well, it's all of it's a description of my personal transformation, but it's not about my personal transformation. It's a point of reference for a, you know, a common thing. It's like we used very traditional kind of narrative tropes for it when we tried to find like what's a story arc that you could use for a narrative that is appealing enough to a, you know, the human psyche to participate in, and we landed on, you know, the hero's journey, like the same thing Joseph Campbell, the same thing they did with Star Wars and Matrix and Harry Potter and whatever. It's like, so we use that narrative, the hero's journey, to make the obvious description of transformation. So from that point of view, it's not about me, it's an observation, right? But you can't be emotionally connected to it unless you can kind of, well, I mean, I can't, unless I can adhere my own experience to what's going on. And so as you start looking at these like the hero's journey or any of these sorts of storylines, you start recognizing how much it's like it's a human thing. It's you know, it's me, it's you, it's everybody. It's like it's not unique to me. I have no unique perspective on it. So I guess to answer the question long form, um, I was an observer of the story, and it's a sort of a typical story, but I lived it as a result of the making of it, which was unexpected, to be honest.
And I think that also Moth, I think at least to me, I came like to a realization of one thing that maybe I didn't realize before, but in your music, like different kind of music, there are different elements. There's metal, there is prog, there is ambient, and so on. But here, the music is very spacious, and I wonder, like, how much inspiration was with Enya for you? Because it sounds to me at some points that it sounds like this orchestration like Enya.
Oh, it was Enya. Yeah, there's one song that's directly referring to Enya. Um, I think the thing, like you pointed out there, which is probably very accurate, is that the thing that I really was inspired by when I heard Watermark by Enya was the spaciousness. It just seemed like you could be inside the music, you know? Like I had the speakers in my bedroom as a kid, and it was the recording quality just seemed so superior to everything except for Def Leppard. You know, even the music that I really like Metallica and all, you know, Slayer, anything that was listed, Judas Priest, Wasp. Comparatively, the recording was like nowhere near as like vast. So I think I took inspiration from those recordings even more so than the music, just the kind of sense of scale that went along with it.
Mhm. So, like having finished the Moth, what is the next? What's the next step for you? I mean, are you as ambitious to do something even more ambitious, or you want to go like left wing and like do a straight thrash metal album now, for instance?
I kind of want to do that. Um, but I think if there's anything that is true about how I work is I don't know until I'm doing it. Like I might say to you, okay, now I'm going to make a thrash metal record, and then three quarters of the way through it, I'm like, oh, surprise, it's actually super weird, right? Like, I think I think the main thing that I need to keep in mind is just to keep an open mind and allow things to develop in the ways that they're going to develop. But I would say that probably the next thing that I do is going to be very simple, but that's typically how it goes. You know, you sort of ping pong from something that's very complicated to something that's a little more straightforward, and Moth was certainly complicated, so maybe the next step is simple.
And have you had time to work on something new, or did Moth
Yeah.
completely consume your time?
Oh yeah, it fucked me up for years. But now I'm starting to be able to think again and starting to be able to process again. And I was up till 4 o'clock this morning playing guitar. Um, so I had to set alarm for interviews, and I'm on my second coffee, right? But I think to answer the question, yeah, now I'm starting to write again, and it's been years since I've written, and it's guitar based again, which is great. Yeah.
Mhm. So I guess that because of the logistics and the financial aspect, it would be very difficult to tour with Moth. But let's say there is an investor who says, I want to pay you to play like 20 shows in the Sphere in the Vegas with Moth. Would you do it?
Of course. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're in any fear of that happening, by the way. But I think if somebody came up to me and said, "Do you want to play 20 shows at the Sphere?" My only concern is I would be like, "Who's going to show up?" You know? It's like I don't know what is the Sphere? It's like 18,000 or something,
Maybe,
15,000. Yeah,
maybe.
maybe of those 20 shows, we'd like sell half of the first show. You know what I mean? And then it would be like 19 shows of them losing money, right? I think that, but if they're willing to do it, man, I'm willing to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music is not about money at all.
Yeah, well, it kind of is. I think that when you spend as much money on something as we spent on Moth, it's very, very, very practically about money at certain points. But your inclination to do it can't be. I mean, if my inclination to do music was based on money, I wouldn't be doing the music that I'm doing. I would be like, I don't know, making a thrash metal record or something,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think it's it's important at this age for me to honor whatever it is that feels important for me to do, man. And yeah, that's why I'm in the position that I'm in. Like I do weird shit, and I will always do the thing that is important for me to do, whether or not it makes sense for anybody else. And again, like I said earlier in our interview, a lot of my line of thinking is just like, shit. How am I gonna explain this?
Mhm. I think the great example was Frank Zappa because he made a lot of records. A lot of them were not financially, profitable, but he
Yeah,
kept
yeah,
doing it. He kept writing
yeah,
symphonies,
totally,
operas, and so on.
100%. Dude, what are you gonna do? Like if you're wired that way,
Yeah.
it's and I'm so fortunate for the audience. Like I've got such incredible support from the audience that they're kind of like, yeah, just do your thing, weirdo, and I just do.
And I think that's the best what you can have ever.
I agree with you, brother. I agree with you, man. I'm gonna have to go. I got another interview.
Yeah. Okay. It's been great talking to you.
You
Have a
too,
great
buddy.
day.
Thanks again for everything. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.